You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down in Oklahoma City today. If you're watching Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, you'll see we're in Bedfords again. Awesome studio. Shout out to them for putting this together. My guest today is Ed Eason. Mate, good to see you again. We connected, right, about a month ago?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, great to see you as well. Thanks.
We've had some bad weather between then and now. But yeah, good to have you back and glad to talk more about the story. I guess for people listening, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so I am. I live in Nashville. I'm a guitar player. Play for a lot of. I'm sorry. I'll get close to your microphone. You know, I'm that guy. I told you I'll move around a lot. Anyway, I live in Nashville. I'm a musician. Play for different artists. Yeah. Primarily, I've been with Carrie Underwood for 15 years, and I tour and play with a lot of other people as well. Yeah.
So what brings you to Oklahoma?
Yeah, so I have started working on a project here in town. I had a friend of mine, T.W. Shannon, reach out to me. He and I met at a conference that we were both speaking at a handful of years ago, and we've kept in touch. And he reached out because he knows I have a thing about mentoring and walking with people and connecting people and things like that. So as the CEO of his bank, the Chickasaw Community Bank, he reached out and said, hey, let's explore some ideas. We want to do something to give back, to serve the community. And Ed, because of your story and the kind of things that you're into, I think you may have some interesting ideas on things we could do. So that's why I'm in town. I just kind of gave a proposal. We talked about this idea of doing a launch pad and helping people. We can talk about that in a while. But that's why I'm in town. I'm just working on a project. Yeah.
Well, good to have you. I'm glad to obviously bring you, to town and take you all over the state and show you some cool stories and some people. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I mean, origin story, where'd you grew up, how'd you get into the music?
So I grew up, I first discovered the guitar in this little town in South Texas where I grew up. It was one of those things, just a fluke deal. A friend of mine takes me to a friend's house. These older kids are playing guitar. One's playing guitar, one's playing bass, and I'm 12 years old maybe. And it was literally just that aha moment for me where I just thought, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, and I want to do that. And literally from that moment on, that's all I wanted to do was play guitar.
And guitar, not bass?
No bass.
Yeah.
Definitely no bass, but yeah, just all guitar. A lot of guys, you play a lot of different instruments. I like to joke that I'm a one-trick pony. I play guitar. I just thought my mom as a kid, she'd say, hey Ed, let's get you piano lessons or vocal lessons. You're gonna want to sing someday. I was like, I don't want to sing. I want to play guitar. So I was always just like focused that hard on this one thing. I just wanted to be great at that.
That's one thing people tell me or ask me. They're like, hey, people from Wales can sing. And I'm like, yeah, they can. They said, can you? Absolutely not. Like, I'm the worst singer. I mean, I don't even sing in the shower because I'm that bad at it. But, you've like Tom Jones, Shirley Bassey, and like all these, Adele's dad is Welsh, and like all these other connections. And I'm like, yeah, it's not me. Like stereophonics, and I wish I could, but, you see Tom Jones on stage and he has that voice, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't come from the same part of Wales that I do.
It's just different water,
I guess. It's just different water, it's not the same.
I tell you what, living in Texas, there's so much talent down there, and same with Oklahoma, as you know, there's just so... I'm always just blown away by the depth of talent in these different regions, especially Texas and Oklahoma. I just think like in my world in Nashville, there's all these guys who are doing either artists who are singers or musicians, who are getting to do the sorts of things I'm getting to do. And then I go back to Texas and I'm floored at the level of talent at just these local places of these guys that most of us have never heard of. Yeah. And just the depth of the talent is just unreal.
They're just local legends. They're happy doing their thing.
And they're happy doing their thing. They love it. Yeah. And they just could just slay anybody out there on the national stage. You know?
Yeah. It's amazing how all that stuff works out, isn't it? You got the guys crushing it on the local level, and you think you could play literally arenas. But no, don't worry about it. Never, I guess, had that. You know, went a different route and was content playing every Tuesday night at his local bar or whatever.
I tell you though, I used to be perplexed by those guys because of how I'm wired and how I'm designed. Right, for me, it's like, where's the big stage? Where's the big thing? And I want to, that's put me there, right? And so that's why I moved to Nashville. It's like, I didn't want to be a Texas guy. I didn't want to work the Texas circuit. And so for me, I'm just naturally wired in that, you know, where are the big things happening? And I'm going to try and put myself in that position. Yeah. And so I was always perplexed with these guys who were incredibly talented, like you mentioned, who were like the local legends. And I just didn't understand their logic. And I always kind of, truthfully, I felt like maybe it was just kind of a waste of talent. Yeah. But now, as I've gotten farther into my career and, you know, get a little older, I think maybe those guys really have figured it out. You know, maybe they're the ones who actually really understand. Like for them, it's about the passion, the heart, and the soul of playing music, and they're doing what they love. Yeah. It's not about getting up on the big stage and, you know,
traveling all hours of the day and on the road all the time, not seeing family or whatever.
Yeah, for them maybe it's like, we do what we love. They're just doing what they love, and they get to be with their family. They get to have this great life, and I think maybe those are the guys who really have it figured out.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to have that bird's eye view and have that you know, the perspective, right, in the future, and look back and be like, you know what, maybe if I did do that, maybe things would be different. But so back to that point, you will go to a buddy's house for older people playing guitar. You think, you know, I want one of those. You run back to the house and say, Mom, I need a guitar. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, well, we live in such a small little town that I at the time we just had those little Sears catalogs and things like that. So I would flip through those catalogs and circle all the guitars that I wanted. Yeah. But I never got one while we were in that little town because I knew there was nobody really to teach me. Sure. And oddly enough, at 12 years old, there was something inside of me that thought, you know, if I don't have anybody to teach me or come alongside me, I may just wind up getting this instrument and quitting. Yeah. Out of frustration, possibly. So I didn't get one. But then fast forward, a year later, we moved to Houston. And as you can imagine, there's a plethora of music in Houston. And that's when I finally got a guitar and got a, first guitar teacher. But the way a guitar finally came into my hands is my mom literally came home one day from a yard sale with an acoustic guitar. And she walked in the door, set this guitar down in the living room. And she'd pay $5 for this acoustic guitar. Yeah. And she said, I found this at a yard sale. I thought maybe one of you boys would want this guitar. And so I sat and watched the guitar for a couple of days in the corner, just waiting to see if my older brother was going to take that guitar. And he never was taking it, because I know where I am in the pecking order, don't run off with the guitar, right? So I sat there and I watched it for a couple of days. And finally I went to my brother. I said, do you mind if I take the guitar up to my room? And he looked at me like, I don't care. So I grabbed the guitar, and that was it. Yeah. The strings were, I felt like they were an inch high. It was the worst playing instrument in the world. But for me, it was everything. Yeah. But literally, it was my mom coming home with a guitar from a garage sale. Is what reignited and started the whole thing.
Do you still have it?
I don't. No. I don't. No. I probably burned it out of frustration.
Or did the whole Keith Moon thing and put it over your knee or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So at this stage, like, what music are you listening to while you're going through? Like, you're waiting a year till you get your guitar. Like, what's the music scene like, and what are you into specifically at that time?
Yeah, well, it's like I'm just. I've always been, as a kid, I kind of got drawn into like AC/DC and just some music like that because of my older brothers, and so that was kind of it. I never was like a heavy pop guy or anything like that. So just lots of, basically anything that had lots of loud guitars. Yeah. That's what I was drawn to. So loud guitars, big solos, and any of that I was just enamored with. Yeah, I remember watching MTV, and you'd see these.
When you was an occasion to watch MTV, right? Yes. Right. Kids now don't know what MTV is.
Yeah. So I remember watching
the YouTube channel? No.
Yeah. So I remember watching those and seeing the videos of like these concert videos, the band getting on the tour bus or the band in the arena and the bowing for all that stuff. I just remember thinking, I want to do that. Like, that's the thing. Like, how do I get on that tour bus and go do that? Yeah. But so But yeah, I'm just listening to anything. There's lots of guitar stuff, but lots of loud music.
I'm all about loud music. So loud music, obviously, I mean, AC/DC, like, I think kids these days probably remember AC/DC from the Iron Man soundtrack. But no, it's been around a long time. And, Angus Young, right?
Angus Young.
And Brian, and just like, but you have an acoustic guitar to start with. So what's that like when you get, do you get lessons with that thing straight away, and then you kind of upgrade to the electric?
So I just fumble around as long as I can on that acoustic, the classic, whatever the Mel Bay book is, whatever I can get my hands on. Whatever kid around the corner who's been playing, getting them to show me a few things. But somehow my mom found a place in a strip mall to take me to get guitar lessons. I went in for a lesson, fell in love with the guitar that was on the wall, and I walked out with that guitar. My mom bought me that guitar.
That's awesome.
Bought me that guitar, bought me that amp, and then that thing it lived beside me. It was a classic. It's a classic deal. It's like, you go to school, you think about guitar, you come home, you race home as fast as you can so you can grab the guitar. I was consumed with it. I knew what day, the guitar magazines came out roughly. So I was like, okay, it's, next Thursday, the new one comes out, and racing to get the magazine as soon as you could when school was out. So just consumed with this passion, and I'm super thankful for that. I think I know so many people who I think we all do. We know people who just never really fully kind of know what direction they kind of really want to pursue.
Yeah.
And that's normal. But I've always been thankful that at such a young age, I just was drawn to this idea of, I love this thing, this music, this guitar, and all my focus was 100% driven towards that.
Yeah, you're right. Because from a young age, you're kind of put into every sport, you're put into everything, classes or whatever. Like there's baseball, there's football, there's basketball, and there's a season for everything, isn't there? But obviously, when you come home, people either play video games or whatever. Well, you had this guitar laying by your side every single day, and you kind of get obsessed with it and making different sounds, and then the sky's the limit.
Well, yeah, and I think the cool thing too is if you think about being at such a young age, and anybody trying to master a craft, there's something about the discipline and the focus that goes into it. And I by no means mastered this craft. I'm not saying that, but when you're in the pursuit of mastering this craft, the discipline and the focus that goes into it, I'm really thankful that as a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old teenager, that I was getting to develop that kind of life skill, I guess. For me, that's just a real gift to have developed that at such a young age.
Yeah.
And to have that focus towards that one thing, so that I didn't feel like I was wandering, just trying to find what is my thing.
Yeah.
And so
you attached to it. That was your identity, and that's kind of you were the guitar player in school.
Correct. Yeah. That's exactly right. So it does become your identity. Then fast forward, you're getting to play whatever stages and things.
Yeah.
And so coming full circle around, and then it becomes, how do I not make this thing my identity?
Right.
How do this thing that has been my identity forever, and I get to do it at a good level.
Yeah.
But how do I make my life balanced in such a way that it's not who I am?
Yeah. When people look back at you leave your legacy or whatever, people look back okay, Ed played guitar, but through those opportunities that he was given with the guitar, he did this, and this, and that's what people remember him for now.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of the path I guess you're on now with the Launchpad stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I think this, I don't know how healthy it is to have your identity in this one thing, because I just look at life and I think all that can go away in a second, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 100 different things that could happen to where a guitar is no longer what I do. Yeah. And so what does that do to me as a person? What does that do to my identity? And so I'd say a handful of years ago, I really started trying to be intentional about identity. Yeah. And where is my identity? What is my identity? And how do I not make my identity something that's attached to this thing that it could go away? Is there something more important that my identity should be?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it kind of the same. For me, it was golf. Like, I was golf my entire life. And, I came to college and I graduated, and I've gone from playing golf every day to playing maybe once a week, if that. And then my identity changed to getting into real estate. And it's golf, real estate, and a little bit of golf as a hobby, real estate, and now the podcast. People know me for the podcast now. So, yeah, I totally get trying to, I was kind of forced into it, right? Because I wasn't going to play professional golf. But it's cool to see both sides in it, that you make that conscious decision to change that and think, okay, like this could go away tomorrow. What am I going to build behind that? Mm-hmm. So you get the electric guitar, you're having lessons, getting, progressing, having fun. Do you go to university to do music, or what's that stage after high school?
I'll tell you what's interesting. I actually, I auditioned for a performing arts high school in Houston. I lived right outside of Houston, but there was a school downtown Houston, high school for the performing and visual arts. And so I'd heard about this place, and so I went and auditioned maybe my sophomore year or something in high school. Well, I didn't get in. So to me, that was the end of that journey. Yeah. Fast forward, another year later or so, I have a conversation with a friend of my mom's or somebody, and they heard that story about me auditioning and not getting in, and they said, "Well, have you auditioned? Did you go back to audition again?" Yeah. Well, that was just mind blowing to me. Because to me, a no was a no.
Right. We don't want you.
We don't want you. You're not good enough, whatever it is. And so I was floored at this idea of, and I'm so thankful for that conversation with that woman. She opened my eyes to this thing about, you can go back again just because I told you no. And so I went back again, and I got accepted, and just for my last year of high school, my senior year.
Is this like a real life fame academy then?
It's like a real life fame. I mean, there's dancers doing ballet in the hallway. There's amazing artists, and there's classical music going on. There's jazz music going on. My first period of school was a rehearsal period. Like literally, my job for that first period was just to go into a room and practice guitar. That was first period. This
was the best school I've ever been to my entire life.
It's like, who gets to do that? But what's interesting about that though was, a lot of it was driven around jazz music, and I was intrigued by that because I wanted to learn a little jazz, because my logic was, how do I get more tools in my toolbox, right? So that I'm not so I'm more versatile. Yeah. But I really never thrived at playing jazz music. And after I graduated from that high school, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I did that for 2 semesters. So
it's a pretty big deal, that place.
I guess. Right? But, there's a lot of super talented people there. So I squeaked in, and but I just went for a year. And so I don't know that really qualifies as going to college.
Why was it only a year?
I literally went there with this idea that I just wanted to go for a year. Okay. And it was perfect for me, because by the time I got to the end of that second semester, we were studying things that I knew that I never wanted to do as a musician. Sure. Right? I knew I never wanted to teach. I knew I never wanted to write big band charts. I never wanted to do orchestration, these sorts of things that you're learning.
Right.
And thankfully, again, understanding kind of how I was wired, and going back to being that kid, seeing these videos of people on stage, I knew that was the path that I really wanted to be on.
Gotcha.
And for me to go learn, how to orchestrate for, however many strings or things like that, it's like, I'm never going to do that. And so it was a perfect exit point for me. Yeah. And so from there, I went back to Houston. I wound up playing in just some R&B jazz group in the worst neighborhoods, and just like it was
anything for a gig.
Anything for a gig. Yeah. And the thing is I was never that good at playing jazz music. Like I just wasn't. Yeah. And I used to think about, even fast forward when I first started doing country music, right? Mm-hmm. So a friend calls me. He says, "Hey, do you want to come play for this country artist?" Yeah. At the time, so we've gone from rock, we've gone a little bit of jazz at the high school, a little bit more jazz at college, and And now I'm playing kind of this R&B jazz group. By the way, I'm not really that good at R&B jazz through any of that. Now a friend calls me and says, hey, you want to come play for this country guy? And of course, I want to make money because that's, if you're playing in Texas, the money is more likely, or more, you have more opportunities to make money playing country music. So I went and played my first country gig. And that was a disaster. So once again, I'm stepping into this thing of like, this is new to me now. And just literally the most embarrassing moment in my career was my first country gig. And I say that's truly one of the defining moments of my career, that gig, because it was such a disaster. I was so embarrassed. I sat out in the car with my brother in between sets. And I literally looked at my brother, and I was so embarrassed, and I wanted to tell him, will you go inside and get all my gear and bring it out to me so I don't have to go back in there and be humiliated? Because I'm humiliated to even go back in there, let alone go back in there and get on that stage. You know? But my brother, in all his infinite wisdom, he just looked at me and said, Ed, it's not that bad. So
and these guys have been drinking all day. It's totally fine.
So the simple words of "it's not that bad" gave me, the confidence to say, okay, I'll go back in there. So I'll go back in there and finish it. It's still humiliating. It's still a disaster. I'd like to say, and I went back in there and I crushed it, and the whole world loved me. That's not what happened. I just left deflated and embarrassed.
You're like, I'm just going to get through this.
But I sucked it up.
Never touching country music again.
That's it. So that's why it's one of my defining moments in my career. Because I think if I had not gone back in there, I talk about that. I do some speaking, and so I talk about this thing about if I had not gone back in there, what would that have done the next time somebody called me to play country music? Naturally I would have thought, well, I don't. Exactly. I don't. Right. And so because of that, I mean, there's no way I'd have the career I'd have right now. Had I not just walked back in there in that one moment of just feeling humiliated and embarrassed, and just stayed the path. And so it's crazy how just one of those failures really is one of the greatest. And for me, it's one of my greatest personal victories. So the lesson there, obviously, stay in the path, failing forward, all the buzzwords. Do you continue to play for this country guy? Or I do. Okay. I do. Yeah. So I'm a glutton for punishment. So he wanted me back again the next time. So I'm getting paid, and I said, sure, I'll do it. And little by little, it got better and better. And so from there, I just get a random phone call to go to play for an artist, and that takes me to Nashville. I go to Nashville. I sleep on a couch for a year. I know one person. That's it. And I just slept on that person's couch for a year.
At this point, have you met your wife? Do you have a family, or is it
No. I mean, I moved to Nashville. I'm 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're really enjoying Nashville, then.
Oh, yeah.
But you're sleeping on the couch, and you probably have no money at this point.
Dude, I have no money. I'm waiting tables at El Chico because I gotta have. You gotta eat. The one thing I'm smart enough to figure out is thinking, well, I gotta eat. I like Mexican food, and there's a Mexican restaurant nearby. So I went there. They hired me. I'm amazed that they even hired me, because what do I know about waiting tables? And I did that for, 6 months or so. And I ate, enchilada platters, once, twice a day.
It's free.
While sleeping on my friend's couch.
So you moved with the intention. Are you still with this guy, or you moved with the intention of, I'm going to find work, and I've played for this country guy, and now I'm going to...
That's it. No, I'm not with him. No, I literally moved to Nashville saying...
Let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. Let's go to Nashville. Because going all the way back around, like I never wanted to be that local guy. Like I never wanted to play the local circuit. And so
you can always go back.
You can always go back, And I watch lots of people go back. I mean, lots of people that moved to town when I moved back, or when I moved to town, a lot of the new people tend to congregate together. Mm-hmm. And so I had a community of all the new guys to town, the guys and girls, and all of them except one all moved back home. Myself, and there's another guy, he's still there. He owns a very successful booking agency, and me. But the other people had other things they could go back to. They started thinking about, well, maybe I should go back.
Plan B.
They had a plan B. Maybe I should go back to college. Maybe, I have a good job working for so-and-so, or my parents, whatever the story is. For me, I never had that.
Yeah.
You know, I never had it's not a pity story. It's just like I never had another thing. I had a one-track mind. It was, I'm going to come to Nashville and I'm going to figure out how to do this thing. And all the heartache and the heartbreaks and the no food and just all these different things, to me, it was just, I loved it because it was just part of the journey, because I just know that I'm inching my way closer and closer.
Right. So how you're at this Mexican restaurant for 5-6 months, and then you get a phone call that says, "Yeah, can you come try out?"
I get a phone call. I get a phone call to come play with some guy and get on a tour bus and go do a couple things, and then you get a call to do something else. And you write tons of songs with people. You just kind of immerse yourself in the culture of writing and playing every day as much as you can. Are
you trying to play like gigs around Nashville, like little small stuff as well, or just?
Well, we would always do kind of like the songwriter nights.
Okay.
So it's all the guys. Just you getting together, you're writing songs, and then you get up songwriter nights, and that's kind of a way for you to get used to being on stage and just you and a guitar. We would do a lot of that. I think it was just kind of one gig and then kind of another gig, and so your circle slowly expands, right?
Yeah,
it's just like
you get
anything.
recognized, and people know they can trust you, and you can play.
Your network slowly gets bigger and bigger, to eventually you're working in circles to where guys are doing real things, and they start to call you in on them.
Yeah. So you get the call, and you go with this guy and jump on a tour bus, and you think I've made it, or no?
Yeah, you feel like you've made it.
You're on a tour bus now. You're like,
oh my gosh,
this bus is like what, $500,000 tour bus.
This is the dream. You've made it, right? But you go
in a cult.
You go to a couple of these shows, and then gigs kind of just ebb and flow, come and go. So artists will have like, I need someone for these 2 shows. So you're learning lots of songs for 1 show or for 2 shows or few shows. Yeah. But the first time you get on that tour bus,
it's big.
It truly is. And then the first time you step into an arena, you get to step on that stage, and that's a huge moment. And I still cherish that moment. I talk about all the time about me taking a moment every night during a concert to just really soak in, right? To really soak in what's happening.
Yeah. To
know how far I've come. Because I know most people don't get that opportunity, and I don't believe that it's because I'm the most talented guy or any of that stuff. It's just for sometimes things just open up and opportunities come up for different people, different times, different seasons, and for whatever reason they have opened up, and I'm fortunate that I get to do this. But I'm always mindful to really just kind of soak it in, because I remember the 12-year-old kid, just thinking,
staring at that $5 guitar, hoping your brother doesn't take it.
Someday I want to do that. Yeah. So
what was that first time you step on the big stage and the lights are on and you're like, whoa, I'm playing a song that I just learned 3 days ago?
I tell you, I think one of the coolest moments for me was the first time I stepped out to take a solo. Take a solo.
Can you feel your hands?
Well, you can hear, when you hear the solo ripping through the arena, right? You can hear it reverberating around. Like that moment, that first time, I mean, I still get giddy at that, but that first time, and you hear that solo just rip through the arena, like that to me is just is one of the most special moments, because it's the epitome of that thing, I recently told our monitor guy, what we do, we have these in-ear monitors. You see everybody with those wires hanging out of their ears and all that stuff. So that's how we listen to our mix on stage. And so we have a monitor guy who adjusts all the levels for everything that we want to hear on stage. But because you have these things in your ear, you're blocking yourself off from the audience. And so imagine being on stage, but you've got earplugs in.
It's like you got one of those dance parties where only you can listen to your own music and no one else can.
Not only that,
but the other way around.
But the whole room's going
crazy.
The whole room is clapping, going crazy, but you can't hear them because you've got these things in your ears that are just muffling the sound.
Yeah.
So imagine how surreal that is. You're in front of thousands of people. The song ends. Yeah. You can see they're clapping. You can kind of hear it. You can kind of hear them. The cheering, but you can't hear it, you can't feel it.
Yeah.
And so what we do is the monitor guys will put out microphones on the stage or around the arena, pointing to the audience.
Gotcha.
And then so I'll tell the monitor guy, I'll tell him, hey, I want more audience mics. And so now
you can really get into it.
He can put them into my mix. So when I'm playing, I can actually now hear the audience and all that, which kind of goes back to that moment of hearing the solos. Now I can really feel the life that's happening in the room.
Yeah. And from that moment, you're like, this is where, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. Give me more of this.
This is it. This is what I want to do. Yeah. But it's like, but I've just always been driven that way. It's like my story is I slept on a couch for a year, then I slept on a floor for the next year. I was sharing recently about how I would go. There was a season where I would go as long as I could in the daytime, not eating. I would drink water because I'm not waiting tables anymore. I can't handle that. So I would drink water as long as I could into the day, and then I would get a potato out of a bag, throw it in the microwave, and if I was really going to treat myself, I'd sprinkle some cheese on it, and I'd make a baked potato. And I did that for just a long time. So I would eat one baked potato. When I couldn't take the hunger anymore, I would eat that. And then that would get me ultimately to dinner. And I could always scrape together enough money to get a quarter pounder meal at McDonald's. So at the time it was $2.99. So it was $3.24 is what it cost for a quarter pounder meal. And so I could scrape together enough money. Well, I ate so many of these quarter pounder meals that to this day I won't eat a McDonald's. I won't eat a McDonald's hamburger. Yeah.
I love that.
It just takes me. It's too painful.
Yeah, I'm not going back to that. I will do anything not to go back to that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you got this moment. You're on stage. You're loving life. You're in a tour bus. Was that quite a short stint then for this guy, or does he like things and you continue to play? Is this country music or is this back to rock?
Country music. Okay. So it's just kind of that was like the first time I'm on a tour bus. It's just going in to fill in for somebody on a quick outing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like the journey is you get a little taste of it and you go back to reality. You get a little taste of it, you go back to reality. And so you just get enough little just jolts of energy from these things. Teasers, right? Yeah. And then I think my first label gig was actually with a rock band that was up there. It was actually a Christian rock band. There's a big industry up there for Christian rock music. And then I started pivoting back into rock music.
Yeah.
And so I did that for several different artists. And literally, I just got a phone call one day from a friend of mine who got a phone call to go play drums for this one country group that has had great success. And he called me and said, "Hey, these people need a guitar player. I recommended you."
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about this story is at the time is I'm working at a coffee shop.
Okay, so you've kind of gone back to working.
Yeah, so because I'm trying to focus on there's things that I'm really trying to focus on writing and things like that. So I'm thinking, well, how do I not keep going out of town and get on a bus with these other people? But how can I stay focused and not get distracted? And I thought, well, why don't I just get a job at a coffee shop and then I can focus on honing and writing and doing these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I'm working at a coffee shop, and so this friend calls me at the coffee shop and says, "Hey, this group, they need a guitar player. I just recommended you. They're going to call you here in just a minute." And I thought, well, there's no way. They're not going to call me. They've got too much, they're big.
Yeah.
And
if they're big, they're not going to call me at work.
Right. Correct. So now I'm thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to be like, hello, coffee shop. That doesn't sound very like, who's this guy? I thought we need a professional, not a barista,
Yeah.
So they called me, and I just answered the phone like I was at my house. The phone rang, and I thought, I don't know if that's them or not, but I just answered it. Hello? Yeah. And just act like this is my number.
Right.
And sure enough, it was them about coming to play.
That's awesome.
And it was one of their people in their organization. and that was it. So that was my first.
Go to your audition with them? Or
There's no audition.
It was like, yeah, you're good.
You're
enough.
in.
Yeah,
you're in.
You've been recommended.
You've been
trust the guys recommended you.
You're in.
You're in.
And I literally show up and go do that deal, and guess what? It's a disaster.
It's a reoccurring theme.
The reoccurring theme, right? So yeah, I think the reoccurring theme is I am persistent. You know, it's like perseverance. Like I just, I get just beat down and I just get up. You know? So anyway, to me it just wasn't very good.
Right. Yeah.
But that turned out to be a fantastic gig, and of course I stayed the path, and it's great. And
So how long did you stay with that band for?
Oh, like 3.5 years or so.
Touring around the country.
Yeah. Doing my first TV stuff, doing all of that. So I go from working in a coffee shop, doing whatever, and like a month or so later, I'm a band leader for these people.
Yeah.
And
you're on TV and playing live shows live on TV and all the rest of it.
Playing arenas. Doing that sort of thing.
So then you've really made it.
That's when you're like, okay, this is the deal.
Yeah.
This is the thing that you've really been going for.
You get a full-term contract or whatever, and it's
you just
sorry, I'm not making coffee anymore.
Yeah, it's like I'm out.
Yeah.
So,
Did they ever kind of like wind you up and kind of take the piss a bit and ask you to make coffee every now and then? Or
they didn't know I made coffee.
Oh, they didn't?
No,
because that would have been hilarious if like your buddy's like, hey, can you rustle me up a caramel latte, please?
No, they didn't know. I didn't tell them. I just kept it. It's kind of like just played it cool.
Yeah,
like, of course I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
This is what I do.
You're trying not to act needy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, they never knew.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, what's like family? I mean, think of all this. You finally, mum, dad, brother. Like, I assume brother never picked up the guitar ever. So he, he's just like, wow, you're a rock star. You made it.
Yeah.
Are they all still in Houston?
No, I've got one in San Antonio, one brother in San Antonio, one brher in Sacramento. They've all been super proud. And my mom calls me all the time talking about
something
she saw, something she heard, whatever it is.
Song on the radio.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you do that, and then you get the phone call from some ladies band who's just like, you know what, you want to go from being super successful and traveling and having a legit like career and safe, right? The money coming in, to take a huge risk on this new artist that's just won this competition and hey, do you want to come ride this from the ground up? Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, maybe, like, that's a tough
it's a tough call, right? Because you're in a, we all wrestle with this, I think, right? It's like you're in a situation that's pretty sweet. It's comfortable. You kind of know how it's going to play out, and it's taking care of you, and you really enjoy it. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am, and then I get this phone call from a guy about, so do you want to come do this new gig, and I suspected that, that she's going to do great and all of that, but you're comfortable over here, this other thing. So I was able to do both things for about 6 months. Yeah. So literally I would play with this one group, and then I would catch a red eye to go play with Carrie, right? Yeah. And I would just kind of do these things back and forth, and I was able to do that for about 6 months. But what happened was,
that's like living the double rock star lifestyle.
The double rock star life, like I've double made it.
Literally every night you're doing this, 2 shows or night, morning, whatever. Like, I mean, that's people have seen the news and seen the lifestyle in the media. Like, it's not an easy lifestyle to live twice, in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So you managed for 6 months.
I'm just like getting off the plane with one and getting on a bus with another, and I'm just doing this back and forth. But there was a moment with there was a moment early on with Carrie where I was sitting on a bus. We were doing this outdoor acoustic show, and I kept hearing some random noise. And I couldn't figure out what it was, but it just kind of occasionally just kept happening. Well, fast forward, a little while later, somebody comes to get us, said, okay, you guys are ready. So the band, we're just doing some acoustic thing or something. Yeah. And we get off the bus. I walk around the corner because I can't see the stage from the bus. I walk around the corner, and there's a sea of people in this parking lot. Yeah. And I thought, oh,
this is different.
I mean, this is a parking lot acoustic deal. thinking maybe there's 100 people here. There's a sea of people out there. But the real moment for me, the real light bulb moment, was she walked out on stage. And when she walked across that stage, I'd never heard an audience show that kind of enthusiasm and excitement.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard excitement and people are excited and all that stuff from stage, but this was different. Like I distinctly remember thinking that this is unlike any welcoming that I've ever seen for an artist.
Right.
And that was the moment where I knew, like, oh, there's something really special.
She's literally being worshipped.
This is something that's really special.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a defining moment for me on that, knowing that, okay, this is definitely...
That made the right decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you ride the rocket ship.
Yeah, and we just take off and we do our thing.
Yeah. And you go from being, I know we spoke previously, you go from being the first person at Stagecoach, going on stage at noon or whatever, blazing hot, to headlining or being the last few acts. Like, that's a really cool journey to be a part of from the ground up, right? There's something that you hadn't done before. I mean, in your own story you have, but you haven't been done with a group, with Carrie or with, like, there's so many lessons in that.
That's right. Yeah, when you get to when the whole arc, there's not a lot of times you get a chance to kind of see the whole story.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, what a time to be alive, right? What a thing to do. I mean, we could talk about what shows you've done and whoever and all this, which we could be here for 4 hours talking about that, and people can go and see the shows that you've played. But let's touch on, to finish up, like, why you're in town a bit more, the launch pad and the businesses that you're kind of meeting with and chatting with, and finish with that. Yeah,
so I think because of my experience growing up, I was thankful, being raised by a single mom. I was fortunate to have specifically, a good mentor in my life, or different mentors, but specifically one that really made a big impact. So because of this one mentor for me, his name's George, he really showed me the value and the importance of mentoring, the value and importance of showing up for people, walking alongside people. And so because of him, I've just always had this heart and this passion just to do that.
Yeah.
Just from my own story. So over the years, I've really started diving into mentoring, kind of being an advocate for mentoring, whether it's mentoring myself or speaking somewhere about mentoring.
Yeah.
So this mentoring thread journey has really been around since I was a kid. And so fast forward, I recently got a call from a guy, T.W. Shannon, who's, a local here in Oklahoma City. T.W. and I were speaking at a conference a few years ago, and we kept in touch. And he recently reached out and said, Ed, as a bank, he's the CEO of Chickasaw Community Bank, and he said, as a bank, we want to give back. We want to help build lives and, just do creative things to improve the community.
Right.
That's the heart of who we are. And so he thought, maybe knowing my story, that maybe there's some ideas that we could explore together.
Yeah.
So we talked and we brainstormed, and I proposed this idea of starting something called the Launch Pad. And the Launch Pad is just basically saying, like, there are people who are trying to do big things, but sometimes they need more than finances, right? People need somebody to come alongside them to mentor them.
Yeah.
And so I said, why don't I just come to Oklahoma and let me tell stories and walk alongside people who identify people who want to do something that's stirring inside of them.
Yeah.
And maybe some people are already doing it, but they want to get to that next level. Or maybe it's just an idea that they've never even taken that leap.
Yeah.
And so for me, Launchpad, what I'm coming to town to do is coming alongside people, finding those people, like, what do you want to do? How can I help you? And who can I connect you with to help this journey to take it to the next level. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm in town just building these stories or talking about these stories and literally just helping people launch big ideas.
Yeah.
That's it.
So if someone's listening to this, how do they get involved and how can they, I guess, apply to be
Well, I think the best way right now is if you just go to my social media. So I think it's at Ed Eason Official on Instagram. If somebody always wants to shoot me a DM and say, hey, Ed, this is who I am. This is the thing I've been wanting to do, or this is the thing I'm doing, but I don't know how to get to that next level. Whatever it is, if people want to just shoot me a message, I'll get back to every one of them. Yeah. We'll just kind of see where I can add some value and just walk along with people.
Sweet. Good for you, man. That's awesome. Well, great. I mean, I appreciate you coming in, taking some time out of your day to share some stories. And, if anyone listens to this, I'll post Ed's Instagram down in the description so they can go straight to it, send you a message. And if they want to listen to you play guitar, I'm sure we could figure that out too.
Yeah.
But, mate, thanks for coming in. For everyone listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.